Welcome to Living Your Career, everybody. My name is Roisin Duffy. I'm your host. The Living Your Career show is a place where we tap the experts on the shoulder to hear the latest advice and insights on job-seeking strategies, tools, and tips to help you in your job-seeking mission, but also to help you to build a sustainable, get a job and build a sustainable career. Our theme today is building executive brands, putting your own stamp on what you do and how you do it. In Australia, we do not have a rigid class system, but we are often socially defined according to what we do, or branded according to our occupation. So whatever brand is attached to the job that you do, you must enhance it, if you can, to stand out, as all good brands should. So how do we put our personal stamp on what we do in our careers in a professional world that is both small and increasingly connected, where the people that we associate with through our networks, the people we work with each day in our work environment, they observe, they talk, and they form opinions of us. Michael Lyons is our very special guest today. Michael is Australia's quintessential brand reputation mastermind, and particularly in the complex and ambiguous world of corporate, government, and executive leadership affairs. Award-winning journalist, Iraq and NATO media executive, and strategic advisor to some of our nation's biggest multinationals and government organizations. Michael's work is heralded far and wide for absolute substance and distinction. The former Chief of Staff to the Queensland Governor, Michael knows better than anyone else that reputation takes time to build and vigilance to sustain. Michael Lyons, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Roisin, and thank you for that glowing introduction. Of course, the governor was Quentin Bryce at the time, and she went on to be Governor General and a leader of this nation in so many ways. She had a plan afoot from the very beginning of her time as governor, and we can talk about that maybe a little bit later. I'll give you some insights. But thank you for having me on your show, and good afternoon to everyone watching. It's a pleasure to be here, Roisin. Congratulations on your podcast. I think right now, as the economy is starting to pick up, that questions are everywhere about what people's careers might be and where they're going. This might be a good program to watch.
Appreciate that, and I think you're spot on. I think it's one of the reasons why we founded the Living Your Career program. It's been kind of in existence quietly in the background for a long time. But with so many people out of work, so many people struggling to find work, and so many people wondering what the job market is now going to look like and how they're going to invest in their careers and build their careers, we thought it was a timely opportunity to bring this to the market. I guess the first question for you, Michael, is what's the fundamentals of a good personal brand?
Well, let's remember a brand is it's a euphemism in many respects to what your reputation is, what you stand for. What are you spoken about when there are conversations about you? In the marketplace, it is about what is the value proposition that you bring to the table in the job that you're in. So if you're looking for a position, and you know this probably more than anybody else, what they're looking for, what our business leaders are looking for, is the value you bring to the company. Now, that is often articulated in your brand and the way you've conducted yourself, whether you've been a good or a bad employee, whether you've enlarged upon the role that you've been asked to do previously, whether you've assisted in the bottom line, whether you've brought energy and enthusiasm and reliability, these great virtues that all employers, no matter who they are, no matter what profession or industry they're in, they're all looking for the same thing. These are the transferable things as you move jobs and through industry.
It interests me, you have spent 30 years building the brand and reputation of, as you just said, Quentin Bryce, a number of others. You work for TEAS in international markets dealing with crisis management. You've been involved in the water industry here in terms of new corporations and the establishment of that in the community. Of the people that you've worked with, what has surprised you most, and what have you found most challenging in terms of brand management, or how you built those brands and projected those brands to the stakeholders and the broader community?
One thing I have noticed as I've moved around the globe, and I've been privileged to meet a lot of these top leaders and executives, is how similar they are under the skin. One qualities that they all share almost without exception is energy and enthusiasm for everything they've done and what they're doing now. It's something they look for in the people they hire. The other thing that seems to me particularly the same is the fragility of their sense of being. They project confidence because they are, but inwardly they're quite fragile. And it's that fragility and to a certain degree fear, depending on what they're doing and how it's going, makes them react to protect their own brand and the brand of the vehicle that they're working on, the organisation. They're the major things.
So I guess when we talk about fear, then we think about self-protection. And then you have to think about, well, how do we develop our brand and be open and transparent and eliminate that sense of fear because we go into protection mode? How do you, when you have to have a really seriously honest conversation with an executive who's both fearful and protectionist, how do you actually get them to listen to what you say?
One of the tools that I use is to be, when it's right, be quite confronting. And you can only really do that after you sort of gain their trust, and that you can genuinely and honestly have them believe that you are operating in their best interests, that you have their future in mind, the future of the organisation they represent in mind. You actually care about them. If you want to get on with your boss and get on with stakeholders and shareholders, they have to be convinced that you are genuinely interested in their success. It is through their success that you will succeed. Once you've achieved that, and there's a variety of ways of doing it, depending on the circumstance you're with, you'll find that they are more likely to take you into their confidence. I was with a leading Queensland businessman for a number of years, a big brand, and one day I said to him, we have to sort of cut the crap here. Tell me about where you see the business and where you see your own brand. And we fudged around, and he likes being in the media, he likes being on TV, and he likes being on radio, and he likes to promote the company. I said, that's right. I said, well, what are you really after? He said, I don't know. I said, you want to be a household name, don't you? And he stood back. He said, oh, I've never heard such a preposterous statement. But half an hour later, he agreed. This was his ambition. He wanted to be a household name, and he wanted the company to be a household name. From there, you manage expectations. You have to manage the expectations of the person you're talking to and set them on a path where you advance their brand and the qualities of their own brand that they've built upon in the direction of that goal. Now, the chances are this guy was never going to be a household name beyond the company name. But he found great relief in admitting it to me. And from there on, we were bonded. I was able to help him and provide him direction and provide vehicles for the expectations he wanted to meet.
I guess the last thing we'd ever think about that individual is that they would want to be compared to anybody because they seriously wanted to be a brand in their own right. But one of the things we were talking about is, imitation can be risky. And, but then I sort of thought, well, many of us, even myself, I look up the food chain and I sort of think the people that I've worked with, who do I admire? Why did I admire them? Why do I want to emulate them? I guess for you, what are the essential steps if you really want to build an individual brand without feeling you're imitating or emulating somebody else? And where are the risks if you are emulating people?
Well, often if you're going to go down that path, and you have to be true to yourself. It's a wise man or woman that knows his limitations. And so if you're trying to pretend or emulate someone who's you've got no chance of emulating, then you're going to look second best and untidy with it. In terms of emulating, you have to be very careful. I remember that when I first started in television at Channel 9, I had a good number of years as a national news reporter for the Nine Network across most of their programs. And when I first started, I was pretty raw, I have to say. I hadn't developed my own style of voiceover delivery and style of writing and all that sort of stuff. So there was a guy in another neighbouring Nine Network station who I thought was the ant's pants. This guy, his voice was right, he wrote well, and I decided to imitate him. And so away I went. And then one day, one of the senior Nine executives came up to me and said, "What are you doing?" I said, he said, "You're trying to sound like one of our other people." I said, "Yeah, because he's good." He said, "He's excellent, but you could be better. But you won't be better if you try to emulate him." That was a great lesson for me. And I went off and found my own way and listened to the advice that I was given, found my own craft and way to deliver, and it saw me through. By the way, his career crashed and burned because what I thought was good in terms of what he was doing was actually not that good anyway when it came to the end. So it was just as well I did that. You know, back when Ansett was one of the major airlines in Australia, it was considered by observers to have a great management and business system. And the federal government decided at the time, towards the end of Ansett, that it would try and have some of the business departments of the Australian government imitate their business processes. And away they went. Of course, Ansett went belly up. Much of it, as I understand, due to the poor process that they had in place. So there was a mad rush to try and work out, we're imitating this crowd and what's going to happen to us? So you've got to be very, very careful. Sure, emulate someone you like's good points. Do your due diligence. Make sure you know what you're speaking about. I've been told, and since then, the best way to emulate somebody that might be a hero is make sure they're long gone, because then you know where they started, where they finished, and and where their problems were. Don't imitate a living and breathing hero.
It's interesting to me because when we talk about emulation, you know, it's not always the shiny people. They may look impressive, but, you know, brands have got to be sustainable. Relationships have got to be sustainable. We need to know who we are in our own context before we know and understand others. And so I think your points are very, very well made. One of the things that's interesting to me is our bosses. You know, how important is a boss as a co-author of your brand? And we've all been there, where we've worked with the boss and we think, I'm really not gelling with you at all. We even get that, Michael, we get that with clients. You know, no matter how many hoops you'll ever jump through, you know, thankfully it's not very many. And I know you're the same. We have clients and employees that go back many, many years. But how important is the boss as the co-author of your brand? When should you know whether to stay, and when should you know? Like, I think if you're in, you're on the way up. If you're out, you're probably in the checkout lounge. How do you gauge that, and what advice would you give to others?
If you're lucky enough to have a good job, and or any job really, and it's yours, you should cherish that job. Someone's given you that job because they believe in you. They believe, as I said earlier in the program, that you've brought a value proposition to them. You need to live up to that. You need to live up to the reasons why they employed you. I've always said, go beyond what the position description says. It's just a guide. You should live that job as part of your career. Your boss expects you to do that. He's not there to be your friend. He's there to run a business. And if you can't do what you've said you're going to do, and better, then the relationship's going to go bad, because he'll only live with it for a certain amount of time. And then you'll get the feeling that the whole thing's flat, it's not going anywhere. And then, of course, checkout's next. If you're doing what you've said you're going to do, then your relationship with your boss, it might have a few sharp edges, but it will be sustainable. And when the time comes to move on, you move on in a good way. Leaving an organisation is as important as joining it. When I was at Tees, now Tees was a huge company in Australia when I was there. Australia's biggest mining contractor, one of the biggest infrastructure deliverers. It delivered the Stone Mountain scheme long before I was there, of course. But other big projects ran around Australia: hospitals, bridges, mines, you name it. It had a $40 billion order book when I left, bigger than Infrastructure Australia. And I was the Group National Affairs manager, looking after their brand positioning and government affairs and all that sort of stuff. When I joined the company, there were two powerhouses at the top. One was Nev Power, went on to be CEO of Fortescue Metals and took that company to amazing places. And David Saxelby was the CEO at another tour de force they were. And they sat me down and they said, there's one thing, Michael, you need to know in this company. We do what we say we're going to do. And we don't care if you're going to be somewhere at 3 o'clock or whether we're going to deliver a $100 million project to somebody. We say what we're going to do. And if you do that, you'll go a long way with the company. That was their mantra. And I think it's a mantra that every employee should take to the table. If you say you're going to do something, do it. You'll find your employers will respect you for it, and your career will grow. It will become part of your brand. If you can attach something like that to your brand, if you can make that one of your personal values and don't deviate from it, make it a guiding virtue of your life, then you're on the path to success.
I think those are very wise words. And I think sometimes we'd all have to say, no matter how mighty we are, we can't always deliver exactly what's required on that day. But so long as you negotiate that message and you manage that message, it's an opportunity for you to build and strengthen that connection too. And one of the things that's interesting.
My wise old dad said to me when I was very young, and my parents wanted me to be a certain occupational profession, and I had other ideas. And of course, I won the day. But my father said to me, Michael, your mum and I, we don't mind what you do. You promise me that you'll be the best you can at it. I said, sure, Dad. He said, also this, there'll be times when you fall down and fail. And he said, but when you fall down and fail, promise me again that you failed doing the best that you could, trying as hard as you could. And don't let it be failure because you were incompetent. These are other things that you bring to your brand. A brand is about articulating your own corporate values, the values that guide how you operate at work, that guide the sort of job you're looking for and the people you want to work with, people who can share those values. If you can establish early in your career, anytime really, and learn to be honestly lived by them. Don't pretend you can't live up to them, change them. Don't pretend. You can never pretend because you can't pretend for that long. Brands, you build brands over time, and that's how you become known for them. And that's how the big leaders in our organizations get their roles. And they'll tell you, I built up my personal brand. Someone said, who can we get to be the CEO of whatever? And your brand is out there. They just so-and-so, he's known for this. He's got a great value proposition. He's a good fit. Let's get him or her.
So true. If you hear good rapport, a good rap, I mean, third-party endorsement, we talk about it all the time. I say to people, you can never, ever, to have sponsors, allies, mentors, people that have your back and show up for you, it's worth its weight in gold, but you will not earn that and you will not keep it if you do not have the ability to say what you're going to do and to deliver well. One of the things that occurred to me, Michael, and I was certainly one of these, I finished high school with grand dreams, but I think I was more into the socializing side of things at the time rather than the academia. And I know that a lot of people that would be listening to me out there would say not a lot has changed, quite frankly.
I know that's been true.
and as you know, it's very true. But the interesting thing is that some people absolutely storm out of the blocks. Some people fumble, they flounder. Then we grow up and we get a bit of maturity about us. It could be that we get married, we have children. It could be that whatever the circumstances, but we got to get our heads in gear. And whatever's in there eventually will come out if it's given a chance to breathe. I'm interested in people that you have met that perhaps had a bit of a checkered past and have found a new footing, and they need to write their personal brand statement, their value statement that you're talking about. What advice would you give to people that said, you know what, so what? You've been in and out of jobs a few times. They weren't the best fit. You probably didn't hit the right jobs or bosses or environments for you. Maybe it was partially something that was going with you in your life. What advice would you give to those people in terms of reestablishing themselves and renewing and reinvigorating their brand strategies?
Sometimes you have to have a very personal conversation, frank conversation with yourself. Life's a funny thing. We leave school and we immediately thought that we should know what we're going to do for the rest of our lives. And I had friends of mine who left school and went into medicine, and one of them came back to me a few years later. Someone had come into his doctor's surgery with a very unpleasant illness, and he rang me up and he said, I can't do this. I don't know what I'm doing here, but I can't do this anymore. I went off to become a pilot, an airline pilot. And I said to him, that's a big change after all that investment. He said, it wasn't my vocation, Michael. And we need to think about that word. What is your vocation in life? Where do you want to be? And find what that vocation is in real terms and go after it. Now, if you go to the university enrollments every year, you'll see mature age students lining up, changing their lives, finding some new path that they really want to do. Late vocation students, believe it or not, they're the ones in the professions that they want, because they, at the end of the day, those people want to be there. They want to not just be a passenger in the industry, but they want to help steer it, take part in it. They want to lead it, and they want to make a difference. I'm not saying that the straight out of schoolers don't find that too, but I said you need to be honest with yourself about what you want to do in life. There's nothing worse than being in a job or a line of business that you don't like, and you're doing it, and you think you're stuck there because you're a financial conscript, or there's other reasons, but life's too short to be miserable and misdirected. Find something you want to do. I said earlier in the program, one of the greatest things you can bring to a role, one of the two things that most leaders, whether it be in the public sector or the private sector or wherever, are looking for in the people they employ is energy and enthusiasm. And you're only going to deliver those in the ways that will be appreciated and that will enlarge your brand if what you're doing is what you like doing. Because then it becomes something you want to do. Otherwise, it's a hard old road, and you're trying to pretend to your bosses, yeah, this is great, I'm enjoying this, and you go home at night and kick the dog. That's not the way to do it. The former CEO of QUT, Peter Coldrake, who has a big personal brand, those who know anything about him, he once said to me, the pride and pleasure that he got at the university seeing students who were genuinely there because this is what they want to do. They enroll 300 students in some course, and by the second week, there's only half of them left, because it suddenly dawns on them, this ain't what I want to do. And he said, I'm disappointed that they're not there, but I'm pleased they aren't as well, because they often find something they really want to do. You have to be honest with yourself. Your personal values will grow with your vocation. Now, your vocation might be, I don't want to do a profession. I just want to work in retail. Well, make it your vocation. Retail is a wonderful industry. It has wonderful leaders. It has great people in it, people who are leading it, and it's an important part of the economy. There's a great career to be had there. I'm not putting down retail, but if you're going to choose something, do it. You can choose something later if you want to. I mean, I was one of Queensland's youngest police detectives when in my very earliest days. I went on to become a broadcaster in television and in radio. I went on to become a leader in the public service through university. I mean, you can have different vocations. I mean, but whatever you do, try to be very good at them, and don't be a passenger. Help steer the industry that you're in. Aim for that.
I do think too, it's like personal relationships. I think when you found something that you care about, you can't relinquish it. And when you find something you care about, and it does, I mean, I finished my master's in my 50s in 2018. And I walked across that stage at USQ in Toowoomba. And I actually was a bit over. I thought, oh my God, I'm going to look like a sobbing wreck crossing this stage in my Moses sandals because the heels were too high and I couldn't cope with them. I said, get me my flatties. There was nothing flash about it. But I felt that great sense of achievement that I had stuck at it. And it meant something to me. And it affirmed a lot of what I know as well, I might add. So I don't care if it's education. I don't care if it's your occupation. But find something that you can invest in, because when you found something that works for you, you'll find life is a lot easier. One of the things
on that point, it is energy and enthusiasm, and fragility and fear in our leaders. From those seeds comes senses of notions of self-improvement, continuous self-improvement. We are not static. We must, the marketplace and the operating environment that we live is fluid, and we must be looking at ways to improve ourselves so that we can continue on the path we want to do.
And I think that comes back to having a level of self-awareness. You know, if you skim over life and you're constantly either ducking or diving or charging ahead, Michael, would you agree with this? You're going to miss a lot of the opportunity and some of the nice qualities in the people in the life and the things that you do. So I think it's, sometimes go home and actually have a good, honest word with yourself and a bit of self-reflection. Say, is this the substance of me? Because this world is not, it's not a dress rehearsal. This is it. This is what we do. This is how we make it. One of the things that I've noticed a lot, and I'm not talking, some of these dignitaries and, but it's brandscaping, and it's how people are now projecting themselves. I guess we're even doing it to some extent today, but people are brandscaping and putting themselves more and more online and sharing more of themselves online. Like, for example, I think LinkedIn. I'm kind of liking some of the things I see on LinkedIn, and then sometimes I think, oh gosh, it's a bit noisy for me. Facebook obviously has picked up its game a little bit, Twitter and so forth. But what do you think in terms of building a brand, executive or otherwise? What do you think are the kind of the do's and don'ts of the virtual world when it comes to personal branding?
Well, it's great to have a good brand, but you do have to communicate it. As I said to a very senior businessman not that long ago, he said, I want to be known for X, Y, Z. I said, well, you're going to be a long time waiting for the audience to come up with that. You have the qualities, and then you're doing much of it, but people, you kind of have to guide people to how they're going to think about you, and so LinkedIn and other platforms provide that opportunity that probably people didn't have previously. It's like advertising yourself in some ways. The communication is an interesting art, and jumping onto LinkedIn and saying, here's what I did last week or whatever, it won't work. It needs to be a little bit more strategic and tactical than that. One thing that disappoints me about LinkedIn, and I think it provides a great networking ability, maybe not great, is the clutter. People feel they have to get on there and say something that even to people that might be remotely interested is just inane, or just has, you're flicking through it thinking, why on earth would you say that about themselves? Or they get on and they say, congratulations to so-and-so for doing that and blah, blah, blah. They're not really congratulating the person. They're just putting their name out there so they can attach that name to the action. Some people are genuinely congratulatory, but it's lost in the miasma of what's going on. The fundamentals of communication reign true, and we all, believe it or not, we all practice the best fundamentals of communication when we make a phone call. We pick up the phone. Firstly, we're thinking we know who we're going to talk to, so your audience is going to be at the other end. We don't ring them at 2 o'clock in the morning. We know when's the best time to advance our conversation with them. We know we've picked up the phone because we think that's the best way to reach them. That's the best channel. But it may not be the best channel. We might think, we might just send him an email. We might just send you know what I'm saying? There's different ways of communicating. We know when the person at the other end answers, they're either going to know you or not. So you know you're going to have some sort of background information or pick up the conversation at a certain point. Telephone conversations are generally short, so you get out what you want to say, and you hope they understand at the other end. Now, all communication basically takes that form. I have a brand to produce. Who am I going to tell it to? How am I going to convey my brand and the key messages in it to that person? Will tell me what channel am I going to use, or which ones am I going to use, and how will I know that they're efficient unless I do a bit of thinking about it. It's not just about jumping onto LinkedIn because there's 20 people making some drawing attention to myself. You've got to think. You've got to be more specific. I was operating in Europe one day, and I was a senior communications person for NATO, which is the NATO alliance over there, and we were practicing in. I was practicing in Eastern Europe, up on the Serbian border, and it was during the post-Bosnian war, and I was attached to a very senior military advisor for the British government, and he said, "I want to be a thought leader, Michael. Give me some advice." Oh, I said, what's all this about? He said, "Well, I've got plenty to say, and I'm good at it, and I want to make a name for myself before I get taken back to Britain into the foreign service." And he had a big list. Here's what I can say about this. Here's what I can say about 20 different topics. I said, "You're going to sound like a dog in the corner barking every car that goes past if you want me to help facilitate that." So I said to him, think about something that you want to be talking about and that you can be a leader and help steer the issue, not just make a comment on it, help steer it. They're the ones who are thought leaders. I said, don't just jump in at everything that comes past. Think about your audience. Will they influence you? Will they influence your career? Think about what you're going to say and find the means to say it. Be strategic about what you say. Just don't run out there. That's the other issue, I think, with brand is that, and the internet generally, Facebook, you can reach 1 million people. Well, that doesn't mean to say 1 million people are going to stand or even want to hear what you say. You might get your blurb to them, but it just goes through one ear and out the other. It's a science, and you've got to think about it. And you've got to think about that with your brand too.
It's interesting. I get people who invite me, say they're setting up little cottage businesses at home, and they might know me in my circle and would say, "Roisin, we want you to like this, or we want you to like that." And the reality is that we're talking, some of this is in the UK, some of this is in the US. I'm like, I'm never probably going to buy this product. I can buy it down the road. Well, you might do something fantastic that I might want, but the chances are very slim. So really, you're not going to get a global audience by getting somebody like me saying, "Oh yeah, that's cracking. I'll buy those candles. I can go down to Pillow Talk, go somewhere else and get those." Do you see my point?
Yes,
I think there's that thing about being, whether, in your brand, you've got to be strategic and think, are they going to be interested in me? Am I going to be relevant for them? Where is the correlation? Where's the shared mutuality here? Michael, our time is coming to an end. I'm wondering if there's one final comment that you'd like to make to people, some parting tips, some parting words of wisdom.
You really must strive to stand out from the crowd. We said at the top of the program, in Australia, it's a funny old thing. If you meet someone new in the first couple of minutes, they're going to say, "What do you do for a quid?" What they really want to know is what you do for a living, obviously. And most people say, so some person says, "I'm a doctor." But you're not going to say you're a great doctor. You're just one of many doctors. So you become one of the crowd. You need to think about how you elevate yourself beyond the others. And just to recap on the major key message for it is you develop your value proposition. What is it about you that makes you better to employ than somebody else? And sometimes, as I said, it can be down to a few key things: energy, enthusiasm, reliability, and a reputation for enhancing upon what you're asked to do more, and take an interest in what your boss is doing, and the success of what he's trying to achieve genuinely. If you can't do it genuinely, get away, but be genuine in it. I'm consulting at the moment for quite a few very big corporations, and And sometimes you find it difficult you've got to really get to know these organizations well, to know what their DNA is, what they're trying to achieve. And that takes time and effort. But when you do get there, you really feel that you can help them. And that's the key message.
I think when you're talking about those attributes, we're talking about what sits within you. The person within is the person who powers the professional. Time and again, when we're talking about your attitude, when we're talking about your energy, when we're talking about your enthusiasm, those are things that can only come from within. And that's what powers the personal brand. Michael Lyons, can I simply say to you, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. I was going to put the word raconteur on your profile because I feel very few people can articulate a story and can get me invested and involved in the way that you say what you say and how you say it. And for that, I want to thank you. And I hope that those that are listening in will hear this. And also, of course, this will go out on LinkedIn and Facebook and all these other places, social media places afterwards, for people to actually tune in and enjoy. And to everybody who's listening in today, I guess we all know we're in a bit of lockdown at the moment. All I'd say to you during this Easter period, and I think Michael would share these words as well, please be careful, travel safely if you're traveling. Most importantly, stay well, stay healthy, look after yourselves. And I think on that note, from Michael and from myself, we will bid farewell to you. Thank you very much for your time today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure, absolute pleasure.